Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. I hope you guys had a chance to catch your breath today with everything that's been going on. It has been an insane day in the NFL. The NFL tampering period had opened up for the first time officially, leading to a frenzy, an absolute crazy amount of news, and we are going to spend practically the entire show covering that. Obviously, the big news coming out from yesterday, we keep talking about Russell Wilson. He officially signed with the Steelers. Kirk Cousins officially signs with the Atlanta Falcons. We're going to break down all that and some more other quarterback moves that have happened all over today. Following that up, we're going to do this position by position. The next biggest position, I believe, we're going to talk about the running backs. We're going to talk about the defensive tackles and the wide receivers and any other miscellaneous news that came through. There's been a lot, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot. My notepad is full. I am 3 pages down on that on moves. It is a lot, so we are going to get right into it. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation. It should pop up on the screen right there for me, you, and everyone else to see. We'll have a little discussion about what you think. Like I said, this is going to be a very NFL-centric episode. So if you have any thoughts on any of these moves, I'd love to hear them. Leave that tip or donation. Leave a comment. Again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, let's just get this started off with the quarterbacks. The big quarterback news, we're going to start off with the two biggest names that were in free agency this offseason, that being Kirk Cousins and Russell Wilson. We'll start this in order. Russell Wilson was the first domino to fall. He went last night, announced around midnight, actually, very late night move, after visiting with the Steelers and the Giants, that he is going to sign a 1-year contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Very incentive laden. He's getting paid $38 million this year by the Broncos. It's a $1.2 million deal for Russell Wilson to quarterback the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it puts Pittsburgh in a very interesting situation. Not just Pittsburgh, but especially Justin Fields. These two moves really put Justin Fields in an interesting situation, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Russell Wilson, what he brings to Pittsburgh. Obviously, it's an upgrade. It's up to you guys how much of an upgrade you really think that is. I personally think it's a pretty big upgrade. You know, people were talking about starting Mason Rudolph. He's much better than Mason Rudolph. You can take a look at what Mason Rudolph did. Sure, he had a couple nice games. Russell Wilson was a league average quarterback. He was probably like the 16th best quarterback in the league. I don't know. He was very average last season. He didn't turn the ball over. And the Steelers were able to make the playoffs with a combination of Kenny Pickett, who turned the ball over a lot, and Mason Rudolph, who, while he didn't turn the ball over, is Mason Rudolph. He's not that special. It's a good move for both of these teams. It should for both sides. Russell Wilson gets a team that is competitive, which is something he was looking for definitely. He obviously won a ring or two in Seattle, but he hasn't won since his second year in the league. So getting on a competitive team, definitely something he was looking at. The Steelers have an elite defense right there, something reminiscent of those teams that Russell Wilson was really successful with in Seattle. You know, he had Marshawn Lynch in that really, really good running game, along with that elite defense. And the Steelers are built very similarly. You know, they're built in such a way that they're very ground focused. When you look at the way that they're built, you have Najee Harris on the ground. You've got Jalen Warren behind him, who's really come into his own as a great back in this league. And that offensive line is really good. They have lots of weapons. They're talking about trading Deontay Johnson, but they already have, you know, George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth at tight end is going to be big. It's a very similar setup to what he had in Seattle. So I'm very excited to see how this is going to turn out, because it's not the same Russell Wilson that he was 10 years ago, you know, but it is still Russell Wilson. He's a very good quarterback. He's an upgrade for them. And I think the Steelers are locked for the playoffs now. You know, they're always a good team. They always find ways to win. But now they have a quarterback, or they have Russell Wilson. I'm not sure how much he's really going to move the needle, but I do think that he will move the needle for that team. The other big news, I'm sorry, I'm checking my phone because news is continuing to break as we speak. Uh, it's been that kind of day. But the other big quarterback news is Kirk Cousins. 35-year-old Kirk Cousins, coming off a torn Achilles, gets paid to the Falcons. 4 years, 4 years, $90 million guaranteed. I believe it's a $180 million deal. He is, excuse me, he goes and joins an Atlanta team filled to the brim with talent. Drake London at wide receiver, Kyle Pitts at tight end, Bijan Robinson at running back. That offensive line is really underrated. That is going to be the Falcons are going to be a really good team. The Falcons have now, uh, they went through last season with Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke. This is undoubtedly a major upgrade. Now we have to see how Kirk Cousins is coming off of that ACL. We have to see what he looks like after. Not ACL, Achilles. We have to see what he looks like after the surgery, if he can fully recover, be the person he is. But the Achilles shouldn't affect him that much. Kirk Cousins was never that mobile of a quarterback, and really what the Achilles is going to do is affect his mobility. Him losing some mobility is not going to be that big a deal. It is going to affect. It is going to affect it. He's going to be even more of a statue, but that's going to happen as he gets older. That's why he went to a team with a relatively solid offensive line in the Falcons. But this brings up a really interesting question. What are they going to do with Justin Fields? What are the Bears going to do with Justin Fields now? Because they're two big trade partners in the Falcons, and the Steelers, or the people that were, theorized to have the most interest in him or make the most sense, are now off the board. And even more than that, you have teams like the Raiders or the Broncos, two teams that are needing quarterbacks, not in the NFC, kind of fit the bill for what the Bears are trying to trade to, excuse me. But the Raiders just went out and they gave Gardner Minshew a contract. Now, granted, it's Gardner Minshew. He's going to have to fight to win that starting job, but he just took the Colts to the playoffs. Gardner Minshew, a 2-year, $25 million deal, so a big raise for him. They still have Aiden O'Connell, who was serviceable. He wasn't great, but he was serviceable. He won a couple games. Do they really want to spend more assets on a quarterback? Do they really want to go and do that and bring Justin Fields in just so he can compete for a job? I'm not convinced that they're going to do that. The other team, the Broncos, they seem to have their eyes on J.J. McCarthy, and they seem to be on the fast track to get it. Now, the Vikings are still in question. I think the Vikings are a great fit for Justin Fields. I think that's a great spot for him to go. But are the Bears really going to trade Justin Fields to the Vikings? Are the Vikings going to pony up that extra that it's going to cost because they're in division? It's really interesting because the Bears are kind of stuck. They've run out of leverage. They had all this time. They needed to get this deal done before this stuff happened, because now look at this. They've gotten themselves in a Baker Mayfield situation where everyone in the league knew they had to get rid of him. Everyone in the league knew it with the Browns, and now they just can't, because no one's willing to pay them. They know that he's going to be gone, and they can pick him up for cheap. It puts them in a really, really tough spot. And I'm not sure what offers they've been getting for Justin Fields, but they cannot keep him. And if they do, it's a mistake. And speaking of Baker Mayfield, we're going to wrap up this quarterback segment real quick. Baker Mayfield got a 3-year, $100 million contract. He's getting $38 million a year. He deserves it. It's not that surprising. We all knew the Bucs were going to pay him. He kind of had to get paid after winning a playoff game last season. The question was how much he was going to get. And putting him in the $30 million range as opposed to 40s and 50s, I think that's a great deal for the Bucs. It's still pretty team-friendly to be a quarterback deal. You have a guy in Baker Mayfield who could still potentially be a franchise quarterback for years to come. You have him for 3 years. You bring back Mike Evans. That team is going to be really solid, really good. There's a lot of stuff going on. So in our next break, we are after this first break, we are going to continue to cover the craziness that has been the first day of the tampering period in the NFL. We're probably going to move into running backs or defensive tackles. I don't remember how I put this. There's so much craziness going on. News continues to break. People continue to sign. Keep an eye out for it. We appreciate you tuning in. We will be right back.